What's up guys, my name is Sparty, and in today's video we're going to be going over early game, everywhere from solos to trios, arena to scrims to tournaments. We have it all in today's video. So before we hop into it, I just want to say thank you to some of you guys over on TikTok who gave me the inspiration for this video. A lot of you guys ask me questions and I usually just make short videos on some quick answers, but today someone asked me for some early game tips, so I got you. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to survive, drop spots, and some common mistakes. Before we hop into the video, please consider subscribing because it helps me out a ton. Alright, let's get into it. This season they added a lot of loot to the map, and there are a lot more reboot vans as well. I highly recommend hopping on Fortnite GG and getting a nice drop spot for solos, duos, and trios, because pretty much anywhere on the map is pretty good for this season. Just make sure that when you are landing, if you are landing near the slipstreams, make sure you're looking out for third parties and just being very careful overall. Although those spots do have probably the most loot on the map, and it's kind of a high risk, high reward to land there, but you're pretty much insured at a crazy loadout and a pad or two. But definitely check those areas out. If you truly want to survive every game from arena to customs to tournament games, I recommend having one set drop spot. Although this can be kind of boring, when you land at this drop spot every single time, you master that drop spot so much quicker, and you pretty much dominate that spot, and no matter who lands there, you'll probably win. Like I said, I really recommend finding a set drop spot on Fortnite.gg and looking at the surrounding loot and the ammo crates around too, so that you can maximize your amount of mats and loot for endgame. Now's the time to really get to know the map, really get to know your drop spot, and really build a loot path that you can have for this entire season, because the more you play it, the better you'll get at it, and the more you'll dominate in tournaments later along the line. Because the map changes every season, your loot route might change each season because the map physically changes. So by starting early in the season and getting that set loot drop spot, a lot of people are going to be scrambling for a new spot and switching it up every week, so you'll have a set drop spot and you'll be able to dominate. When you find a drop spot and a little loot path that you can do each game, practice it in arena. See how many people land there, practice off spawn fights, and get to know the area pretty well until you feel comfortable enough to land in scrims. Then practice your off spawn fights if there is anyone contesting you, and if not, then just do the regular loot path and practice your rotation. Really getting to know your drop spot will help you survive off spawn so much more. If you're landing there in arena and dying too much, or if you notice that it's too contested in scrims, maybe switch up your drop spot. Just land where you're comfortable at, but if you're dominating that spot, definitely stay there. The next tip that I have for you to survive off spawn are high drops. High drops is basically where you pull your glider out before your POI so that you can scout where people are landing and land somewhere else. Because if there's a lot of people landing on, let's say, one half of the POI that you're landing at, then you can land at the other half, take all that loot, and then just go fight the one or two players that are left from that other half. And then you get all the loot. This doesn't work in every scenario. Like, let's say you're high dropping and someone on Spire has an AR, they can beam you out of the air pretty easily and you're dead. If you're landing somewhere like Holly where there's not really any way to grab a gun and look in the air, then you should be fine, and you should have the advantage in most scenarios. I recommend doing this in solos mostly, and if you are doing this in trios or duos, have only one person high dropping, obviously, so the other people can get a good drop, or even switch up their drop. If the person scouting says, oh, there's 3 people going at that house, don't go there, that kind of thing, that can really help you and be beneficial. You may be thinking, why would I want to land after them? They're going to get all the loot and just go key me right away. But that's not always the case. If you really strategically land out your drop spot and make sure you're landing not too much further after these players, but enough where you can scout everything and switch up where you need to land if you have to go somewhere else. The next tip that I have for you to survive off spawn is to make sure that you have a shotgun, shield, and materials. If you're going into a fight with a gray SMG, no mats, and no shield, and you just plan on aim dueling it, chances are you're not going to win the fight. But let's say the other person got good RNG and they have a shotgun and shield as well. you'll have the advantage because you have mats, and obviously you're a better fighter. But seriously, make sure you have shotgun, shield, and mats to give yourself the best chance possible to survive off spawn. And if you don't get that, consider just dipping, because if you want to survive, then you're gonna need those things to actually win a fight for the most part. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you don't want to high drop, you can just scout out the area and see where people go, and don't fully commit to one location, because if you see someone land there and you don't see someone going to the house next to you, then you could just go to the house next to you and minimize that 50-50. Minimizing the 50-50 is going to help you so much in surviving off spawn, and that's going to be hard to do when you have a shotgun, shield, and materials. Obviously, you're not going to have a crazy amount of mats, and once you get about 300, 200 mats, you're going to want to go key the other player if you have a shotgun and shield. So when you're playing these fights out, you're going to want to play very strategically. Take smart peeks, really track the opponent and play smart, and don't do crazy edit courses, crazy piece control plays. If you see an opportunity to piece control the other player, then obviously do it. But if you don't, then just make smart plays, smart peeks, and don't commit to the 50-50. Also, if you're fighting in a house or something early game and you have the ability to farm during the fight, then farm some mats. If you need mats, then farm. If you don't, obviously, then just win the fight. But if you're low on mats and you think you're gonna die, then be farming mats during the fight. And just always have materials, because if you have more materials than the other person early game, chances are you'll win the fight. For trios, fighting early game is going to be a little bit similar, but also quite different. Obviously, you're going to want to be scouting your location and seeing where players are going so you can minimize the 50-50 and make sure that you have shotgun, shield, or if you have more than one player together, then team up on one player so that you can take him down or trade him out and have the 3v2 later on, or the 2v1, whatever it may be. It's a numbers game, so if you see an opportunity to isolate a solo or a duo and do a little 3-on-2 or a 2v1, do it quickly, then get out of there, and then you'll have the 3-on-2 or the 2v1. In 3v3 scenarios, the best place to be is high ground. Try to pressure from different angles and try to eliminate the opponents quickly and efficiently without taking damage while playing together. It's kind of hard to play together while you're on high ground, but if you're on low ground, for the other hand, it's a lot easier to play together. So high ground and low ground both have their strengths and weaknesses, but if you're stuck on low ground, play together with your team, call when you're editing, and make edits and plays together. You can also do some duo and trio piece control where one person pieces the guy up and then the other two, or just the other player, shoots the other person and then you guys both kill him. This is a lot more efficient than having 1v1s everywhere and forcing your teammates to win their 1v1s. If you're playing with your team, you're more likely to survive. Positioning is everything in your POI. You're going to want to be positioning yourself on buildings for high ground, or if there are more than one teams, then position yourself anywhere but the middle of those two teams, because you're going to get third partied when fighting either one of those teams. If there are more than one teams at your POI, maybe let them fight and then you become the third party. That way you can pick up some easy eliminations and fight the teams when they maybe have a player down or they're low on shield or mats or ammo or stuff like that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Just to recap, I pretty much just went over that everywhere in the map is pretty balanced. There's a lot more loot on the map and a lot more reboot vans, so pick a loot route on Fortnite GG that best fits your playstyle. Now is the time to hop on Fortnite GG and learn the map, learn the new locations in the map, and if you guys are planning on landing there, be very careful. It is very high risk and high reward. Maybe even loot in the shadow forms so you have a less chance of being sighted, but just be careful overall. You guys got this. Like I said, for the millionth time, hop on Fortnite GG and look at the surrounding areas at your POI to find places you can rotate to for extra loot and extra materials. Practice these loot routes in arena to try to get them down, and then practice them in scrims. This way you can fight against better players and practice the off-spawn fights and the loot routes against people that are actually going to be in your Cash Cup games. Now that you have a set loot route, if you don't feel fully comfortable just diving straight on your house every single time, which you shouldn't, you should be very resilient and very on your feet about your drop. This is why I like to high drop. You can look around and see where players are landing and land somewhere else. That way you can look to third party a fight later, or to just get the most loot possible and isolate the player on the other side of the POI. If you don't want to high drop, simply scouting where players are landing and adjusting your landing drop based on where these players are landing will help you survive off spawn so much more. One thing that'll also help you survive a lot more is eliminating 50-50s in general. So finding shotgun, shield, and materials before you go into any fight, as well as implementing the dropping tips to make sure you're not landing with someone at the same location. My biggest tip to you in early game fights is to minimize the 50-50. Play slow and track the opponents, and it can be hard to play with low mats, so make sure you're going into fights with mats or playing with smart peaks and even farming while fighting to ensure that you can win the fight. Because if you have more mats than the opponent, chances are you're going to win that fight. In 3v3 scenarios, high ground is your best friend because you're going to be low on mats and they're not going to be able to crank up to you, and just putting pressure on them on different locations, on different walls, whatever it may be, different angles, while also playing with your team so that they don't get boxed and isolated by duo or trio piece control like I was talking about earlier, where one person boxes the opponent and then the other shoots him down, and that way you can get the kill quicker and more efficiently. And by playing on low ground, just play together with your team, but height and playing at different angles and using the POI's natural high ground and natural angles to your advantage will help you survive off spawn so much more and dominate your POI. Don't get third partied and position yourself well, and be the third party if you can for free elims. I hope this video helped you out, and if it did, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.